Okay, so to start, we have our thumbhole cuff piece cut right here. You'll notice a couple of things with this specific pattern piece that you will not have with other pattern pieces. This is how we shape the thumbhole cuffs with the Dibby Club patterns. We have these cutouts for the thumb that make it a little more comfortable to wear. Some drill marks that you will want to make sure and mark when you are cutting out your fabric from your pattern piece. You are welcome to use a washable marker, which is what I've done here, or you can use the heat disappearing ink pens as well. But do not forget to mark these drill hole markings. And then we have these notches, and these are going to help us place them correctly on our sleeve after we have made the thumbhole cuff. So this is the wrong side of my fabric. You'll see that the right side of my fabric has this dinosaur print on it. So that is just for your own knowledge, that you know which side I'm working on as I go through this tutorial. So what we're going to do is start by folding it in half like so. So you'll notice that I am going to be lining up the curves of the thumbhole openings down here. And what we're going to do is pin across this edge here, this raw edge here, and we will be sewing from the edge here a straight line out to the first drill mark. Then we'll make sure and back tack on both the beginning and the end of that stitch. Then pick it up, start at this drill hole here, do a straight stitch out to the third drill hole, once again back tacking on both sides. Then pick it up and go from this final drill hole here out to the edge. So all we're doing at this point is just using a regular straight stitch. This is going to be it's going to be on the cuff vertically, so we don't need stretch in this stitch. We can use a straight stitch. I'm going to go ahead and do a straight stitch from this edge to the drill marking, another one between there, and then one to here. I'm going to be using a dark thread so that you can see what I'm doing clearly, but since there is a bit of tension on this seam when you wear your cuffs, please make sure and use a matching thread in case it shows through on the right side of the fabric. So let's go ahead and start by doing that. Okay, so with these seams finished, we're going to go ahead and let's manipulate the cuff here so that the seam is on in the middle somewhere, just somewhere so that it's easy for us to finger press the seam open. You're welcome to use an iron if you would like, but finger pressing should be enough for what we are doing here. Now shift it back up to where it was, the seam where it was before, so that with the seam allowance pressed open, you should only have one layer of fabric at the top here. Now you don't have two layers. That's going to be really important here when we start doing our folding for the thumbhole cuff. So you're going to come to this side and fold it in half, hamburger style, as your preschool teacher would tell you. Okay. With it folded this way, the thumbhole openings from both sides should be matched up. Okay. And this is where we are going to sew one side of the thumbhole opening. So you'll notice if I hold this up to the camera as is, you're going to see 4 layers of fabric. We have 2 outside layers of fabric and 2 inside layers of fabric. We do not want to sew through all 4 layers of fabric. We only want to be sewing through 2 layers of fabric. So to do this, It's really quite simple, although it's hard to show clearly on camera. I will do my best. All we're going to do is by holding the thumb hole cuff like this, you're going to take your finger and push down those inside 2 layers of fabric. So you can still see them in the camera, but I've pushed them down. Now, when I pinch it together, they're hidden. Now you only see those 2 layers on the outside. I'm going to go ahead and pin those together, okay? Now, on this end of the thumb, I'm going to once again push down those inside 2 layers of fabric. This part is why it's very important to only sew to the drill markings. If you sew past the drill markings, this is going to be quite tricky. Now I'm going to pin it together. So now from this top view, you only see 2 layers of fabric together, not the 4 that we had before. And that's just because all we did was in the space between the drill markings, I just tucked in, shoved down those inside 2 layers of fabric. We're going to go from this drill marking right here, take a 1/4 inch seam allowance and sew across to this drill marking here. The important thing is that you do not want to sew through all 4 layers. Those 2 layers of fabric on the inside that we tucked down, you need to make sure that they stay tucked down out of the way. So make this stitch across here, but only sew through the outside 2 layers of fabric. So let's go ahead and do that now. And it is absolutely good for you to be stopping and shoving in those inside 2 layers if you need to as you sew. I'm even using the back side of my tweezers to put them between the 2 layers and really make sure that everything is shoved out of the way so that I am only catching those outside 2 layers of fabric. Okay, so this is what it should look like after you have sewn that stitch. And just to really drill it home for the umpteenth time, we have only gone on the outside 2 layers of fabric. Now we're going to put our hands in like this and turn it basically inside out, what feels like inside out. And now we're going to do the exact same thing with the other side of the thumb hole. So what was once the inside layers, now they're the outside layers. So just like before, we need to make sure the inside 2 layers are tucked out of the way. Then we'll pin this thumb hole curve together and sew it with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, making taking a lot of care to only get the outside layers of fabric, and of course back tacking on the beginning and the end of the stitch so that it's nice and secure. All right, you are done. You have made a thumb hole cuff. I know you don't believe me because right now it doesn't look like one, but all you're going to do is take this top layer of fabric, so you have 4 layers here, 1, 2, 3, 4. Grab this top layer of fabric, and by putting your thumbs on the inside and grabbing the outside, you're just going to turn it right side out. And just like magic, you now have a thumb hole cuff to add to your sweatshirt, coat, whatever you want. Pretty neat. So a couple things to note at this point here. I'm going to give you a couple of options. The first thing, if you find that it feels uncomfortable around the seam, that the seams feel really bulky, all you need to do is flip it inside out again and trim down those seam allowances a little. If you're using a really thick fabric, this will likely be uncomfortable for that reason. So just take the time to flip it inside out and trim those down for comfort's purposes. Another thing you can do, there is a reasonable amount of strain that goes on the top and bottom of this thumb hole opening while you are wearing it. That is why we back tacked on all of these stitches around the thumb hole. If you are worried that it's going to separate still, maybe you're seeing some of your thread show through for some reason, maybe your back tacks came out, you are welcome to hand stitch a bar tack stitch, just some reinforcing stitches on the top and bottom of the thumb hole, and that will help keep that from separating over time. The last thing to note are the notches. If I can get this to lay out for you. There we go. The notch on the top here, or the bottom of the cuff. So this little notch right here, I really hope you didn't cut that off, because what you need to do at this point is match up this notch with the notch on your sleeve, and that's going to ensure that the thumb opening is on the thumb side of the sleeve, not the outside part of the sleeve. So make sure that you align the notch with the sleeve and everything should go fine. So you'll just repeat this process with the other thumb hole cuff as well, and you'll have a pair for your new sweatshirt. Thank you so much for joining me for this tutorial. I hope that it made sewing your thumb hole cuffs that much easier. Please check out our patterns that include thumb hole cuffs at Diby.club and subscribe to this channel so that you don't miss any of our future videos, and I'll catch you next time.